It isn't just about adding years to life, it's about building organizations, building institutions, building healthy lives. And those organizations and people who can endure with purpose. So we're going to look at this from 3 different perspectives. I'm going to jump right in and ask you all to define what longevity means to you and where people may get it wrong. Go ahead. You want to
start? Well, yeah, so, you just said it. For me, longevity in my work is all about longer, healthier, happier lives that are more connected and of meaning, and how AI can help us to build that. And what I think people are often getting wrong in longevity is that it's not about beating aging or catching out death, but that it's about building a society in which we all want to age and where we celebrate being old just as much as we celebrate being young.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, at least with my current research, is understanding longevity in terms of generational shift. So that can be a family generational shift with a family business. It can be a corporate generational shift. Either of those things and how we negotiate those from generation to generation. I think the thing that people often, when I say I'm working on some of the longest lived organizations, a few things pop into their head, ranging from the Catholic Church to a modern multinational, which is only usually about a century or so. And I'm looking at organizations that we can derive lessons from that can range up to over 1,000 years, in some cases over 5,000 years old.
Okay.
I go back to basics and define longevity. And longevity is from Latin. It's longus evum, and it's not longus tempus. So it's not time, it's evum, which is the existence of life. So it's a long existence. So the word longevity already has embedded in its etymology the sense of a good life for as long as possible. So I think that's something core that I guess somehow we've forgotten, specifically now, which has become a buzzword. And everyone is using longevity in this idea of the living forever. It's very American, I think, this approach. It's very technical, it's very mechanical. It's all me, do this, do that exercise, do that diet, do that routine, forgetting that it's something strongly and heavily societal. So I guess we should have to bring back the core meaning of the word itself, which is a long, healthy, existent, not simply life.
Okay, so let's put some time frames on it. We did get one time frame that's very long. How do you think about longevity in terms of years?
Well, we do have sort of average life expectancies and so on. We're seeing more centenarians, so people living older than 100. So, we want to extend the life expectancy, but also importantly, we also want people to lead healthier lives for longer, right? So that's how I think of longevity, and how can we not just add years and numbers, but also healthy years.
Okay, so maybe 100. You're saying, the Long Now Foundation is especially thinking.
The Long Now Foundation was looking at 10,000 years, but I came to this because we were hitting 30 years, and I needed to hand off the first handoff in a 10,000-year, what was hoping to be a 10,000-year institution, right? And I looked around for the experts in the books, and I didn't find them. So I started reaching out to the people that were managing some of the oldest organizations in the world. And one of them was the oldest hotel in the world in Japan, that was started in 718 and was on its 47th generation, which was just for the first time being handed off to a woman, the granddaughter of the family. And so each one of these stories just had so much to it that I felt I kind of had to write the book because of that.
And you're in the process now of writing a book, is that right?
Yeah.
Exciting. Good. Okay, and then Nic, give us sort of a time frame on what you're thinking longevity means.
The person that we have a record in humanity that lived the longest life is Jeanne Calment, which is a lady from Arles in south of France, which lived 124 years. That's what we have recorded. So I think it helps us to see the things the other way around. Instead of looking forward, we should have to look backward. How she got 124, which I think tells you a lot about, again, the other side of longevity, which is, yes, living for longer, but also how you can get there. It's not something that happens when you're 60, 65, you start thinking about longevity. It's a little later, let me tell you. You have to start looking at it when you are 20, 14, 9, what about your mother? What about where she was living? And I think if you see from this perspective, you see how much important is longevity in today's society, and how much is important that we see backward. So what are the things, the strategies, the connections, the discoveries that make us living a good life for a longer time? Optionally up to 124, at least we've been there once.
Okay. So, Alexander, coming to you on a specific question about what's the single most important principle for enduring organizations?
Well, I would say the most common denominator that I'm finding is that all of these very long-lived organizations in some way have a very good storyteller. And in some cases, those are very official storytellers. They can be like Levi's or Wells Fargo. They have history departments because their marketing is based on it, right? But in many cases, in these old family ones, it's an aunt or an uncle. Sometimes it's a facilities manager who's kind of seen all the different versions of the organization come through. But I think what's interesting to me about that is that there is no role really in companies as the storyteller in charge. But I think that making that more overt would be an interesting thing to do.
Okay. And then the inverse, which is, what's a common failure that kills organizations?
Well, it seems when you look back over history, aside from things like big natural disasters and wars that can really devastate an economy, it's really just thinking about growth in a different way. And I think many people in this room, and certainly where I'm from in California, think about, you can't have a company unless it's growing. But even at 1% growth a year, there's a limit, right? Like you will consume everything. And so all of the organizations and companies that are over a century or more are all right-sized for what they do, and they don't get over their skis. They don't leverage themselves financially in ways that would risk the entire company if they make a wrong bet.
Okay. And then, Nic, about brands and organizations, what is the underlying principle that builds trust or builds relevance over time?
I think I think organizations should have to start thinking about placing a longevity in their mission statement. Like in the 2000, when BCG allowed us to see that climate change was an issue, and maybe it was important that as companies we should have to start dealing with it. I think longevity is the same. If any business in the room doesn't have longevity in their mission, so caring about their customers, their brands itself, the healthiness of these brands made from trust, all the perspective, I guess you're missing a point. I guess it's late. I think you should have to start putting it necessarily as one of the core mission of your brand, because there's no one brand that doesn't have an influence on the longevity of their customers.
So how do you think about other things like product design or employment practices or marketing, or how do those things factor in?
That's all part of this dimension. We're building an index to define what are the principles of how a brand influence longevity, as well the behavior of the brand influence the longevity of the brand itself. And you have obviously the product. So it's a good or bad product. It's doing good or bad to the people. It's how you communicate it. So it's a good or trustable communication or not. It's something that leverages the right channels. So the channels matters a lot about how you can impact longevity. It's how you treat your own people, so how you're perceived by others, and how you transfer your brand through generation, which is what he's working on. So it's a word of mouth. So the longevity of a brand sometimes is simply generated by word of mouth. My grandma told me that thing is good, even if it's the worst things for your health, but she said it's good, so you trust her. And I think it's something that brands still haven't realized how much these all dimensions are important, and you can measure them. And if you can measure them, somehow you can suggest how a brand is ready or not to face the same challenges they face with climate change, which will be longevity.
Okay. And then, Carolyn, so your ethics, and in this time of AI acceleration, how do you think about guardrails? There's lots of conversations about longevity and personalization and all of these things, but what would be an ethical tripwire you're watching?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I want to say, even though I'm an AI ethicist, I am really excited about AI and about innovation, because often people feel like, if you're into AI ethics, it's all about de-accelerating or stopping it or putting roadblocks in. But it's all about building systems, societies with AI that work for us for the common good and the benefits of everybody. So going back to my work with older people, first of all, what I'm watching closely is the issue of ageism, which is not just one of technology, it's one of us in society, right? And how we see older people, people of all ages, how we're maybe prejudiced against them or ourselves. I mean, it concerns us all. Actually, we're really ageist towards ourselves too. And how ageism in our society, which is so widespread and lots of people are not aware of it, how that may influence the way we're building new technologies. So maybe, for older people instead of for problems that people may be perceiving. Also, older age is something, it's not one size fits all. Different people have different experiences of old age. So I'm watching that very closely, how ageism plays out in technology and in the way we use it. And specifically, I'm also looking at care. So, social care, people living with dementia. We've got more and more people living with dementia, and there's so much excitement in how AI can help. And I think rightly so. We're already seeing that it's, helping people's well-being when they are living with dementia, but there are huge issues around consent, also deceit. So I know of systems that are chatting, so AI chatbots for people with dementia, and they pretend to be your granddaughter or your daughter or so. So there are issues around deception that we need to think about. And I'm not saying outright, oh, this is wrong, but it's an ethical debate that we often have to have of what kind of society we want to live in.
So I have a question for you on the ageism. Are you studying different cultures? So I live in the United States. That's different. I lived in Latin America for 5 years, and I feel like the Latin culture admires people as they get older. They're, really the elders of society. Are you looking across cultures at how ageism is different?
Yes, I mean, I work with people from all around the world, within the United Nations as well. As a new convention on the rights of older persons coming out. And that's, yes, we've got societies where, as you say, who view their elders in a different way, perhaps more positive way, but we still get pockets of ageism and terrible consequences for them. So in some societies, we see, for example, older people, often older women seen as witches when they're starting to show signs of cognitive decline or so. So even though you may have an experience of, we're respecting our elders, the everyday lives and experiences of people as they age, there may still be huge issues there. It's an international, global issue.
Okay, so I have another question for you. I live in San Francisco, Silicon Valley. We have, I'd say, 1 in 5 cars that goes by is a Waymo in front of my house. And older people are starting to catch on to this, to think, hey, I can have a self-driving vehicle. I don't have to drive, in my 80s or 90s. And voice-activated technology is much easier for older people than, pushing buttons on things. Are you looking at the technology as designed for this group and what they use?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm super excited because I hate driving. I'm 41 and I can't wait to have Waymo around here, right? So, but yeah, so it's one piece of work I'm doing with colleagues. Is actually, how do we build inclusive technology? And I see, people in my lives who are older who are using, for example, their iPhone and then adjust their text sizes to work for them. So it's not technology built for older people, but in a way that's inclusive for, different kind of challenges that maybe, or needs that people may be experiencing. So yeah, I'm also looking at that.
Okay, and then for all three of you, as life is extended, we're all living longer, what institutions do we need to think about reforming? Would this be education, healthcare, other things, and how would we design for this?
Well, I think what's interesting right now is that a lot of the institutions that we think of even as new businesses, the social media, for instance, like let's take Instagram. It's starting to get to 15, 20 years old. Some, Facebook's going to be coming up on 30, 25, 30 years old. And we think about them as these social media moments, but they're actually cultural artifacts. And, you can make fun of somebody for taking a picture of every meal that they have. But if we had that from 1,000 years ago, of a picture of everyone's meal, it would be a terribly valuable resource. And I had a conversation with the CEO of Flickr about this, who, as he took over the company, he's like, we're serving, the images of all these museums, but we're operating as a startup. And so many, many companies are starting to realize that the thing that they need to start thinking about themselves as a cultural resource, and if they're doing that, how would they operate differently?
Okay.
I think we have to go to the top. It's time we do it, because we have changed everything in every industry, and somehow governments and the public sector has adapted to it, and it's time that we revolutionize the way the systems, and I think governments are dealing with the topic. I think this is a political issue. It's not a technological, it's not a healthcare issues. It's purely political. And we went to the bone, so we designed an exhibition that was over literally a month ago. It's called The Republic of Longevity. It was at Design Triennale Milano. And literally we invented the state which is not there, putting back again the importance of the health of the population on top. So we invented ministry that are not there, Ministry of Sleep Equality, Ministry of Purpose, Ministry of Food Democracy, Ministry of Togetherness. Try to provoke the current governments to try to understand that they have to reinvent the system for an aging population, which is us. And I think the other point is that we tend to forget it's us. We think about them, but all of us are aging. And it's something that it's cross-cutting all the dimension. That's why I think this is not just a niche topic that we typically yet see today as something that belongs to healthcare or some dimension. This is a cross-cutting topic, and I think it's also the biggest opportunity of humanity today, because we keep on seeing this as a problem. I think this is our opportunity. In Germany, you have roughly 80 years old of life expectancy. Population over 60 will be 25 millions. What do you want to do with these people? Are they a problem or the best asset you have? I think it's the best asset we have if we change the logic, the policy, we work on understanding the dynamics, we make society more inclusive. That's an asset, because that's going to happen. So you can't avoid that. So you can't keep on creating new pension system. You have to try to find a way how you can maximize that incredible knowledge that you say could access today to a fantastic technology that doesn't require any more interfaces like AI.
Mm-hmm. You know, so I'm aware of a couple startups in Silicon Valley that are trying to do mentor matching of older people with younger people. I mean, do you see that as a government initiative?
I think it could be, but I think there's an opportunity for many businesses just to make it happen. I think the other misconception is that since you're old, everything related to business is bad. Because it's old, you have to protect these pandas, you know, in the zoo where the panda people lives, which are the old people, which again, it's us. I would like to remind everyone we're talking about ourselves. Hence, if you are exposed to innovations, things that makes your life better, why you shouldn't want them? And again, I think there's a lot of misconception of marketing. Just like aging and longevity are something only for non-for-profit type of things. Who say that? We are the same consumers. We're just getting older.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what do you think? Do we need to redesign certain institutions?
Well, first of all, I completely agree with you, Nick. I think, on one hand, we're super excited about longevity, and on the other hand, demographic aging is now the big monster that people are talking about, and, aging populations, and what are we going to do about that? The problem is not older people. The problem is that our systems aren't fit for purpose. Yeah. And, I mean, I work in social care a lot in Germany, Pflege. It's a huge issue that in the UK alone, there are 2 million people who've got unmet care needs. And that gap is still widening. So we do need to build better, and we've been knowing this for ages, and I know in this country too, it's all over the news all the time. What are we actually meaningfully doing about it? So, building better systems there where people who need care and support get what they need in a way that also is in line with their human rights, with their dignity, with their autonomy, and at the same time also value care workers here, invest in humans as well as in technology.
Okay, so you come from 3 different points of view. I'm curious about where there are discrepancies between your points of view. Where would you disagree with each other on this longevity topic?
It's not the right panel. You should have to ask to the next one, maybe.
I would say maybe, I don't think we'd disagree about it. I think we might complement that, often, so in care, again, when it comes to social care, often we think that we need to keep people really autonomous and independent, and that's what we really, we all really want. But there's another part to that, is we are social beings, we need interconnectedness, we actually receive care from others every day in one way or another, so that we, think of the concept of care and what also AI and technology can do here, that we build not just for autonomy and independence, but also for interconnectedness.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to kind of go for a lightning round here as we wrap up. I'm looking for one principle from each of you that leaders in the audience can do to sort of strengthen this longevity, whether it's on the human level, on a company level, or institutional level.
Well, I will mention that storyteller in charge one. What is your storyteller in charge? Especially if you're a company that's coming up on a time that it's maybe a generational shift. And I'll cheat and add one for, if you're starting a company that's meant to be a high growth company, imagine your wildest success scenario of your growth, and what is your actual right size so that you know it as you approach it and you don't end up dying because you think you have to grow past some imaginary number that you never thought about.
Okay, so I'm on faculty at Stanford Business School, and I focus on high-growth companies. So my question is, how do you know when you're right-sized?
Well, I think you have to scenario plan it yourself, right? Like there are global brands that are hundreds of years old, like Kikkoman soy sauce or Zildjian cymbals, or these ones that exist, but they have expanded in ways that don't over-leverage themselves. And in software, right sizing is a very squishy thing, right? That you can ship without having things actually ship around the world. So it's going to be different for every company. But if you look at the failures of certainly the early .com failures, they were definitely because they thought they only could succeed if they were growing. But many of them were totally viable companies if they just stayed within their means.
Okay. Good example. Stephanie's saying like Buddha. Okay, so Nic, give us a takeaway that everyone in the audience can think about.
Unfortunately, I can't claim the IP because otherwise I would be very rich. But I have to go back to Cicero. And I'm sure that if you want, we can walk around Munich and many other cities in Europe and find this sentence somewhere, which is Salus Populi Suprema Lex Exto, which means that the health and the welfare of the population should be the supreme law. So should be your mission statement inside your company. And my question to everyone is, there is any higher law than this one? And I think we've forgotten that. I think if you just put this principle as the highest principle, or whatever business you do, could be whatever, even when you do defense and missiles, I think you should have this thing as a principle. If we remember that, I think you can clearly see that sometimes, first, we don't mean it, so we are not looking for the welfare and the health of the population. But if you keep it as a principle, then you understand how this could be, again, that's my point, intersectional to every business. You were meaning self-driving vehicles. Have they ever market their cars for an aging demographic question? Nope. But it's something that obviously is helpful. We did a fantastic panel, I think it was 10 years ago at the MIT with Joe Coughlin, inviting 95 years old people, and they were just saying, would you love to have a self-driving car? Yes, so my daughter doesn't have to pick me up. Second, I trust technology a lot more than a real driver. and there was people in their 90s, okay? Just to let you know that there's something that we say, oh, incredible. The point is, did we ask them, or are we asking us? So if you see from this perspective, and you see the salus of the populi, which is welfare and health, not only health, welfare and health as the mission of whatever company, you see how each company could have a business in longevity of the population.
Mm-hmm. So my parents are in their early 80s, and they just visited a course that I teach at Stanford in which Google came and talked about how in the future, 5 years from now, every household will have a humanoid robot to do lots of tasks, and self-driving cars will drive you around. There's no one more excited about this than my mother.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
But did we ask them? No, we didn't.
Yeah.
We just think, oh, no, robots are bad for old people. Who say that?
Yeah.
Who say that?
Okay, so give us one takeaway for the audience about living longer, healthier lives.
Well, I would say that we should all start with ourselves and self-reflect on how we see aging, how we consider ourselves and how we age, what's important to us, the society we want to live in, but also what might already limit us today. So I spoke to somebody yesterday who's 35, and he said, I'd really love to start ballet, but I'm too old for ballet. It would just be silly, wouldn't it? And I was like, why? You know, if you're 35. But that was really, you know, it was a little story, but it really highlights how this person is self-limiting herself. So I think educating ourselves about ageism and what it means to us and to others, I think is really important.
Okay, so we're lucky if we get older. That's how I think about it. For everyone who's afraid of getting older, we're really lucky as we age. And thank you. Help me thank all of our experts here on different perspectives on longevity.